Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Special interview edition here of the Get in the Hole podcast. Stephen McAvoy joining in with you guys, welcoming in Raymond Williams. A lot of experience in the room in the brand and marketing. Whoa, my headphones just totally bugged out. Ray has been working in Nike, Zenith. He's worked for United Brands, Cutter, Shop Doctor, you name it, he's done it. He now runs his own social media brand at Golf Projects. You can find that on Instagram. And welcoming in a new podcast soon, the Course Cafe coming up, hopefully up the pike. Very excited to watch that. Raymond, welcome into the show, man.
Man, really appreciate it. Quite the intro. Love it.
You totally lost your volumes. Say that again.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Totally great. I don't know why my headphones just completely bugged. None of these interviews ever seem to work out the way you want them to, but it is what it is.
All good.
Well, Ray, thank you again for joining us, man. Really excited to get into the world of golf. I want to just start off with your background, as I'd mentioned, everything that you've done in the past. But I know you played football in college. You followed a few companies that were football related. Of course, Nike, major player in the football space, as well as Zenith and Shop Doctor, as well as Cutters as well, when you worked for United Brands. What made you get into the world of golf?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been in and around sport like my entire life. And so when I got the fortunate ability to be able to play college football, golf was always something in the off season after we were just grinding throughout the season and spring ball and weights and whatnot. Golf was always something that we could step away from, that we could still have like an element of competition outside of us playing like poker, FIFA, Call of Duty or whatnot. So back in the day when it was like a couple of dollars to go out onto a driving range and just hit balls, we would just go out to the driving range and just hang out during the springtime and just have a lot of fun. And then after I graduated college, I moved down to Orange County after a few years of working at Nike, and that's when things like really started to ramp up. So just being in and around that culture, obviously like golf is a pretty big deal down in Orange County. So being really close to the OEMs and a number of different like golf related brands, it's just something that was easily picking up, I guess you could say. And again, like everybody talks about, once that bug bites you, like it's really hard to like get away from the sport. So ever since then, I've just been in it every day.
So as you've seen golf grow, of course, like the spike in golf obviously happened in 2020 during COVID. You started Golf Projects in roughly 2021, 22-ish?
Yeah, so originally the handle used to be Oregon Golf Project. So moving back up to Oregon, the whole idea around the handle was just going to be reposting photos from brands and like actual Oregon golf courses. I think it's a super underrated state for golf, and not a lot of people like realize outside of Bandon, everybody just talks about Bandon. So I wanted to bring a little bit more life and color to the other golf courses that were represented within the state. And then, like you said, just this last summer, I actually adjusted the handle to Golf Projects and started getting a little bit more focused around my actual content, and again, just like speaking about the things that I'm interested in, specifically around footwear and apparel. So people seem to be interested in it. It's definitely taken off. It's been a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, the apparel world of golf is really kind of seeing a transformation, and obviously you've delved into it a lot on social, whether it be brands getting more into the athleisure space or just golf in general, shifting from the traditional brogue style shoes and long pants and polos to hoodies and joggers. Like I literally just bought a pair of Primo joggers. I'm going to try on in about 10 minutes. Like the idea that we're shifting away from this. What have you seen since starting Golf Projects that you've really kind of seen a transformation in the space? Was there like signs of it that you ever saw like pre-COVID even that might have precursor to all this?
I think people definitely had an appetite to wear other things on the golf course, and it really depended on where you played. So obviously in like Orange County, there's a lot of rules in terms of what you wear, depending on which courses you're in. But like when I moved up to Oregon, people are way more easygoing on like their apparel choices. So those brands just didn't exist the way that they do now. So I think, again, something from a consumer centric standpoint, like there's way more options and availability for you to make like those different choices. You don't, like you said, you don't always have to go with the polo and the pant. So that makes a big difference. And I think like the big brands out there, like your Nike, your Adidas, your UA, Puma and whatnot, like those brands aren't going to go away from a performance standpoint, but I think that there is a really interesting thing happening in like the tastemaker space, the lifestyle category, what's happening in the technical sport category. People are putting a lot more emphasis into trying new things, which is really healthy for the sport, I'd say.
So like your background is really in brand marketing, and I know you delve a lot into it on your mini series through Instagram. What are some of the things that you're seeing from a lot of these brands that are making them stand out in the space? I'm noticing a lot of them are getting a little more limited, not to compare them to like a Supreme per se, where it's limited drops, 30, let's say, articles or clothes come out and they're gone in 30 seconds. But aside from that, from a brand advertising and marketing standpoint, getting into golf, what have you seen from those areas that make them stand out?
Yeah, I mean, they're super granular, so they have a singular focus where, like I had mentioned, some of those bigger brands, like it's a category within the massive portfolio. So these tastemakers in the space, like this is their baby, so they treat it like that. And they're really good at telling stories, and they're very intentional around the products that they make and they bring to life because they're investing their own dollars into it. And so what you're seeing is projects that are really special, that are taking the time and the attention to detail. And that is also getting captured through some of your storytelling or just the way that they like bring those products to market is a lot different than what you have seen in the past, which I think again adds another layer of uniqueness to it. And they just double down on community. Like these are individuals that are again really passionate about the sport. They're out there, they're golfing every day. They value social media and how to build communities there. So again, you're seeing that in all of the different touch points, which is really great to see. So it's going to continue to build as these tastemakers gain more notoriety and attention. And again, 24, 25 is going to be really interesting just to see how the market reacts and then some of the other like collaborative opportunities that are going to come out of it.
What's been the most rewarding part of being able to kind of dig into all these brands and see what they are about when it comes to these different categories?
No, it's a great question. I think like the whole tone of the page is around like this place of discovery. So my big emphasis is trying to find those gems out in the space and then help story tell through my perspective. So again, like as somebody who's been in brand and marketing, I can speak to a little bit of why people are seeing what they're seeing, but I'm also a consumer too. And there's things that I'm really interested and passionate in. So I like to just speak about the things that I like as opposed to like trying to sell anybody anything, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
out of that, I think there is this level of uniqueness in storytelling of providing my own perspective on what I'm seeing in the space around some of these special projects has been really cool. And again, I think people have been interested in that type of output.
What have been some of the top brands that you've seen really make an emphasis in the space?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, everybody's kind of doing their own unique thing in terms of the product selection and then the experiences that they provide. I think two that come to mind. Sentinel is a brand that is doing something really unique in the sense I just put out a video about this, that they're foreign and forgotten methodology around taking products that your typical golfer may forget about, like a rangefinder case, or other different like accessory pieces, and like reprogramming the materials and how those products are built to elevate their overall like user experience with those products. So that brand is really interesting. They're using materials and design choices that people have never heard of or seen before. And then on the flip side, Jane, which is a smaller brand, does a lot of things experience based that the space has never seen before. So they did an activation with Cop Golf that was very heavy on like the family and like focus on like what the experience is for new golfers. So stuff like that, when you talk about like how do we grow the game the right way, you have high intent projects on the Sentinel side, and then you have really clever, unique experiences on the Jane side that's happening over the course of a bunch of different brands and a lot of other spaces. So yeah, the space is white hot. I thought things would slow down, but we're in the thick of winter here in the States and things are still happening week over week, which is really cool.
When it comes to like elaborating a little more into the product quality of things, I know when I saw your video on Sentinel, the idea of like finding these like really niche, like in-depth product, like materials and types that you never really even see. Like I think there was one for a club cleaner that was made of basically like climbing materials, stuff like that. Like, what have you noticed that like getting creative with random different things that you don't typically see? The quality of these goods, they're almost second to none with how well they're actually produced. Has that also made a bigger allure and a bigger appeal to these kind of pieces?
100%. And I think it's just that like these individuals that are creating these brands, A, they're like really great tastemakers, but B, they're hyper focused on a single product.
Yeah.
And so out of that comes exceptional quality and really great output. And then again, they do a really great job of storytelling and bringing those to market through arguably like one of the most important channels to communicate through social media and stuff, so that, to that degree. So yeah, again, like there's no lack of focus when it comes to some of these brands and the way that they're bringing products to life, because that, like I had mentioned, that's their baby. They want to own it. They want to be able to put out really great product and it not necessarily be like a Amazon thing where you go in there and you see the same rangefinder case or glove locker in 30 different markets. It's the same colorways at different price points. Like these are super unique and have a way more intention behind them.
Now, but also on the flip side, you also see the bigger brands, and Nike really kind of stands out to me as particularly when they dropped their Air Jordan Travis Scott collab. It was like, all right, we're mixing up the streetwear from the golf, and obviously like this has been happening with Tony Finau, Keegan Bradley, Harold Varner. They've all been wearing Jordan cleats. I think like Keegan Bradley rocks like Air Jordan 7s, I think it is. I forget the exact one, but like just completely swagged out on the golf course. And you could argue that someone like Tony Finau is easily the best drip in golf. Like, where do they kind of stand? Because they're still mass producing these goods, which you always see their typical like polos, pants, everything that's natural to the brand of golf. But aside from the footwear area, are they also trying to expand? Are they trying to get more niche in this sense? Or is it really is only going to go to the footwear idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had mentioned this a little while ago, but like golf is going through its first lifestyle era, in my opinion, and I think a little bit of that is the connection to culture, not necessarily through like just apparel or footwear. I think just in the sense of where these individuals are coming from are more passionate about just the sport and the heritage of it. I think they're opening up the conversation of what things would look like if things pivoted or evolved over time. And so Nike is obviously like a sport company that can tap into culture through its athletes and then has the resources to bring really unique product to life. Obviously, the Travis Scott is a perfect example of that. It was one of the, this is the nerd in me, but one of the top 5 highest searched golf related products over the last like 6 or 9 months, something like
Oh,
that.
God.
So that thing that product specifically like speaks way beyond just golf. Like you're inviting sneakerheads, you're inviting people that are really passionate about music. And so for Nike and Jordan brand to be able to like open up the conversation around culture again, I think is the progression of where we're seeing the sport of golf like move towards, which is something that I'm really happy about.
Are you seeing other brands try to emulate this? I haven't really seen much from a Adidas, Under Armour, with the exception, of course, of like Adidas branding, like hoodies on course, very simple things like that. Do you see other brands like that making a push? I know FootJoy is a little bit getting into it. They obviously paired up with Malvin for their traditions, but also just kind of getting a little bit funky in what they're doing. Are there other brands that are major, big time in the golf space that are doing that?
I would say they definitely dip their toes in through collaborations this year. So you mentioned Adidas; they did a Bape collab for Adidas Golf, and then Puma has done their own internal collabs with like Puma Golf and Puma Basketball, where the Puma Ricky Fowler drops. So they're introducing the idea of what it would look like as a like heat check in the market with their current consumers, and then the new consumers that are jumping in. So again, those big brands, they don't necessarily want to miss to like wreck the already small category priority that they have now. So they're again just trying to taste or heat check the market to see how people will react. And then that's why I'm really interested in what 24 and 25 is going to look like.
Are there any areas in golf that these brands haven't touched yet that you're surprised they haven't gotten into?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think they're starting to do it more, but this like we went through an influencer era and then now we're like in the very thick of the creator era in the sense of like these creators are now starting to generate like their own brands, and you're starting to see like collaborations on that level. But I think this last layer, which I kind of put myself in, is these like curators, like who can curate really great experiences and product lineups. I think brands are starting to open up the conversation of what it would look like to um, sit down in a sense of like curating an experience or a product line around a certain moment, just to capture a little bit more attention and have a different conversation than they've had in the past.
Elaborating more on that, I find it. This is a series of questions that I have, but it's better that we dive in now. I've noticed a lot, particularly with Callaway and Good Good, when, and this also coincides partially to the live thing, which we'll discuss more on. But the idea that the creator is almost as marketable as the player, and it's almost made a complete 180 in the space. You're seeing a lot more content creators and brands. I think the TaylorMade is now with Foreplay and Barstool. Like I mentioned, Callaway and Good Good. Are you seeing a lot more of that as well? And why is it that the creator is just so much more marketable than the player? Aside from the fact that they can obviously churn out content on the daily, doesn't the player still hold weight in the space?
I think there's different levels of entertainment. I think when the way that like media has evolved over the last couple of years, what we watch and how we watch has changed our priorities on the athlete versus the creator. So we feel as consumers way closer to the creator because they're cranking out content at some moments daily. So whether it's you're watching long form content on YouTube through like a good, you're absorbing who they are as a brand and those individuals. You fall in love with these characters as opposed to the limited output that you get through the PGA Tour or the Live in your like traditional media broadcast, which again, I actually literally asked the question just the other day of like, where do we see Live and PGA Tour in the future? And a lot of people are saying like we tap into YouTube more just because like that entertainment value is, I don't know, I guess they're looking at it as there's more of an emphasis there. And so even from like an athlete standpoint, like their character value through the lens of social media, like they don't really like deep dive into who they are on social. I think Tony Finau is a really good example of who's used social. Even Bryson is starting to do it a lot more, but like allow your personality to shine through those mediums in which us as consumers, us as fans are absorbing like who you are as an athlete. And so that's something that again the golf space hasn't really like tapped into historically. So we're seeking out other forms of entertainment, and that happens to be through the YouTubes and the social medias of the world.
So the YouTube aspect is really interesting because, and I've been having this debate now with my co-host Ben for probably the last 2 months, and particularly now with Liv getting John Rahm and the domino effect of everyone thought Tony Finau was going to jump, Tyrrell Hatton might jump, Xander Schauffele has been rumored forever. I think I reported like 10 minutes ago that a Spanish website had reported that Victor Hovland might go, that Wyndham Clark might go. These are major champions that we're talking about. And the shift from Live, I had this internal debate for about a week, particularly starting on Friday. The idea that Live could basically dominate the PGA because the PGA is trying to look for more investment ideas. Liv's got infinite money. They're also getting all of the stars at this point. Like, does YouTube actually play like that big of a role? I know Live doesn't really get a lot of viewership, particularly like when they had partnered with the CW, and this is totally out of the realm of brand marketing, but we'll kind of get back on that. But the idea that we are in this YouTube space and we're in a quick, fast-paced Twitter media or Instagram, TikTok, really too. Liv might be able to tap into that better than the antiquated PGA Tour. Do you think personally that a Liv dominated world could very well come?
It's going to be dependent on who has the most flexibility. So like historically I had been with a company that had a um how do I say it? I mean, it was like an elite level partnership with the PGA Tour, and it was impossible to storytell around the athletes. They made it incredibly difficult, which from a brand standpoint, we had to get really unique on how we leverage the PGA Tour brand to be able to also connect with the golf consumer that we were trying to get to. So there's just a lot of like logistical things that I think are going to get really interesting in the sense of if there's too many tours, the tours become uninteresting. Like the question that I asked on social was, is there a world where the PGA Tour crumbles, live isn't interesting, and the only thing that anybody talks or watches from a pro standpoint is the majors, which theoretically is like seems to be happening when you look at ratings and whatnot. And then that's where a lot of the feedback was like, hey, this is already happening. I only watch the majors, and a lot of my entertainment value comes from YouTube.
I think a lot of that also spans from the idea that the golf space as a whole, everything's been behind a paywall forever, and with the exception of the couple of featured groups that you can see on ESPN, or again, PGA Tour Live is basically all through a paywall on NBC Golf or Golf Channel or whatever it may be. The idea that we can consume content on Live through YouTube and even Facebook, or even now with the CW, it's been kind of a little less, but the ability to see all of that way, and it's a new wave. I think at the end of the day, like, people are only watching the majors anyways. And as a golf content creator in the space, looking at it from that lens, like, no one really watches golf. I don't watch golf, and I report on it every day. Like, the idea that I can literally go on YouTube or Twitter and get every ounce of info that I need is really kind of staggering and almost embarrassing. And I'm saying this from a point that I should be watching golf a lot more. But in regards to Live pushing more on this topic, a lot of sponsors have dropped a lot of the players from Live. Obviously, Phil lost Callaway, KPMG. Lee Westwood lost UPS. Rocket Mortgage got rid of Bryson. So did Puma and Cobra. DJ lost Adidas and RBC. The list goes on. Do you think that these brands missed the mark, though, when it came to dropping them? Because at the time, it was, I don't even know what the word really is. It was uncalled for to leave the PGA Tour. Do you think they're regretting that now because of the fact that Liv is having this glow up?
I think it's more so of being, it's just a strategy thing. Like going back to the idea, just to use like Good as an example, they're posting content and talking about the sport in a way that's more consumer friendly. And so if you were to ask yourself as a big brand, would you rather invest in a group of individuals that's captivating a younger audience, probably an audience that you're trying to tap into as they get older, that could eventually become your consumer? Would you rather invest your dollars, your energy and effort into something that you can get closer to more consistently? And they've been proven over years that they're really good at content generation, and people are interested in their stories and what they're doing, as opposed to a single athlete that is probably dramatically more expensive, is harder to get to, and has way more hoops to be able to storytell around. I don't know. It's just, I've worked with athletes in everywhere that I've been, and it's just continuing to get harder and harder and harder, which is again why I think consumers are less interested in who they are outside of being just an athlete. So yeah, these content creators have a really special place, again, just has how media has evolved over the years and what we look at as how we prioritize, how we digest things.
And as it pertains to brands, because Malvin immediately pops out, I first heard of Malvin when I played PGA Tour 2K21. I had never heard of them. I was like, oh, this is an interesting brand in the space. Bought on the product. I was like, wow, this is like really quality stuff. I don't think they have a partnership with any sort of golfers. I don't believe. Is that another aspect of these niche brands getting deeper into the golf space, where they don't have an affiliation and they're solely focused on the consumer rather than making things like a Jay Lindenberg, who was always throwing out new Victor Hovland lines, or Colin Morikawa is constantly recreating Adidas. And most of these guys don't even like what they're actually wearing. I think Victor Hovland said he'd much rather wear all black than wear the ridiculous azalea pink polos all day long. Do you think that's also a part of the allure of these brands, the fact that they have no affiliations and they can just put out content that their consumers drive?
100%. Yeah. And I think Malvin did just sign their first LPGA athlete. I can't remember what her name is, but she was the first athlete. It was just literally like maybe a month ago. So I think there's two folds. These athletes are incredibly expensive because the cost to participate is extremely high. And so from an agent athlete perspective, like, they're just trying to get as many dollars out of whoever their partners as they can to help sustain like their ability to continue to participate. On the brand side of things, Malvin puts a ton of money into brand experiences because they're super close to the end consumer. So they have obviously more and more retail environments that are popping up around the world. And then secondarily, they host a ton of different tournaments and like culturally relevant events that again is boots on the ground, like they're in the consumer's face. So instead of putting a lot of dollars and emphasis on athletes, they're focusing their attention and energy and effort towards their consumers. And so again, I think that's just the evolution of how we market in and around sport. And Malbon was really, really basically like a first in that standpoint when it comes to this new like lifestyle era that golf is going through.
Do you think there's any chance, because as a history buff, I've always been enamored with the idea that history always tends to repeat. And particularly in the world of fashion, we're kind of seeing that again. We're going back to those old, I guess, like revolting kind of, or so like in revolt sort of style that we saw back in the like counterculture days, and we're getting back into that. Do we ever see a return to traditional style golf, or are we kind of in the athleisure and beyond stage forever at this point?
I've always been interested in that too because vintage is still like people are really obsessed with vintage, but like if you look over these last eras in 15, 20 years, are people going to want to wear what we're currently wearing now? Even though like a lot of people on the vintage side are tapping into like 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't know because that performance look is such an odd look. So I'll be curious again, like what the technical sport category will look like, taking some heritage looks and reprogramming the like look and vibe of that, just so there is still an emphasis on performance, but it has an elevated level towards like this lifestyle component. Again, that's why I'm super interested in what 24 and 25 is going to look like.
24 and 25 is going to be really important. And the way that I view, again, one of the bigger brands, as we look at both who the brand is and what the brand might become, Nike is another brand that, and we keep on going back to this, the idea that Tiger Woods might leave, or alternatively, honestly, Nike might be getting rid of Tiger, which you had mentioned in the past. And I thought, and I conjured this up because after 25 years, Tiger Woods is finally at a point where we kind of know the expectations. We know that he isn't going to be playing every single week on tour. And although he carries the Nike brand, he hasn't worn Nike cleats in 2 years. Yet they keep popping out the old iterations of old Tiger shoes. The idea of either Nike leaving Tiger or Tiger leaving Nike seems so outrageous. But you had made a note that Nike might be getting out of golf completely. Do you think that holds a lot of weight? Do you think that Jordan as a subset of Nike is going to fully take over, or just Nike doesn't see themselves in the space anymore?
I just don't think it's a priority internally. So I don't think they leave entirely, like they cut off all their golf SKUs. Like there's probably not a world where that happens. I think they're going to have their core line that probably does well, sells well at pro shop, sells well on their like D2C ecosystem. So, but it's just from a prioritization standpoint, like, are they going to continue to sponsor athletes like Brooks, Scotty, these individuals that are playing well now? Like, where's the next like wave of athletes when they come in? Like, are they going to chase them down as much as they have in the past? I don't know. That's something that I'll be really interested in again, because internally, like, it just doesn't seem like they're putting a big emphasis as a prioritization on the category, which is unfortunate. And that's where I brought up the point where maybe Jordan Brand steps in and they make golf more culturally relevant, at least in this little era that they're going through. Because Jordan Brand, that's somewhat internally what they're known for, of just being able to like capture attention and have really unique conversations in this space. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be a wild couple of years, and like just working at Nike and being on campus, like the Tiger Woods building is a big deal. Like that is a gigantic conversation that happens. There's a area just outside of the Tiger Woods building and across this massive field that's like double soccer field, I want to say. They recreated one of the tee boxes there, and the word on the street is like he used to bomb these shots off that tee box and break windows in the Bo Jackson building. So like every time you're on campus, someone tells that story, which is wild. So like, again, him being in the brand with the brand for 25 years, he's an icon in the sport and on campus. So the conversation is definitely interesting.
I know you're a father. I'm not one yet. However, my fiance has gotten me hooked on Costco. Do you shop a
Mm.
lot?
Yep.
What's your opinion on the Costco golf clubs? Because these things sold out in 30 minutes. And part of me was like, do I spend the $500 because they look like tailor-made P7s? And I was like, nah, no, I'll just game the old clubs I have. What's your opinion on a brand like Kirkland getting in this space? The putter looks like it's a Scotty. Obviously, the golf ball has gone through multiple lawsuits to Titleist. You think these golf clubs are legit?
I think so. I think people don't realize how big of a brand Costco is and how
Oh, yeah.
much revenue that they do year over year. It's absolutely insane. Don't quote me on this, but they may do more than Nike, I think.
I
So,
think, if I'm not wrong, I think Kirkland was the number one CPG brand in the world this year.
yeah,
Which, granted, it's a little bit different than what Nike sells, but at the end of the day, it's
it's
comparative.
gigantic. It opens
Yeah.
up the conversation on available resources. So if they can invest in the category while it's white hot, they could do some damage. Surprisingly, and their network of shoppers is massive too. So Kirkland is very similar to like when you go into a Trader Joe's and it's just rebranded Kirkland. So I don't know who they're using or who they're manufacturing with. Would be really interesting to know that. So that's something that I would hope like some account out there would be able to deep dive and like uncover who's the brand behind the Kirkland signature. I think that would blow a lot of the lids off the conversation. But yeah, I mean they continue to sell out and it continues to drive conversation, which is really hard to do in a noisy space right now.
The funniest part about Kirkland is my sister asked for Costco sweatpants for Christmas. And I'm like, why the hell do you want these? And she goes, honestly, like something about the Costco logo just draped on a pair of black sweatpants makes it feel like Supreme or like Kith. And I'm like, really? Okay. Now I'm seeing everybody, and I'm out on Long Island. And so like everybody is wearing Kirkland signature. They just released the Kirkland signature black on black logoed like sweaters. I'm like, you know what? These are kind of cool. Like I'm kind of all over these. They have the white hoodie that has the diagonal logos everywhere. Do you think like to sport a full Kirkland bag at this point, because technically you can now minus the driver, is it corny, or like could we like see a scenario where Kirkland Golf all of a sudden becomes another major player like in this space and people keep on turning to it because clearly the niche market is there?
No, I love it. I think it's all just consumer conversation. Like the TikToks of the world, like you said, it's just generated so much buzz that people now want to be a part of the conversation. Like them doing slides and socks and sweatsuits is insane and dropping clubs and stuff. So it's definitely entertaining and like them being as big as they are and the resources to be flexible to have those different moments. Again, the brand guy in me like celebrates that and the consumer obviously is like totally about it. So yeah, let the magic happen, I guess.
Before I let you go, I want to explore a little bit more into what your expectations are for the future with golf projects. Of course, you're launching your podcast, Course Cafe. Tell us a little bit about that. What exactly is the premise, the goal? When is that officially going to come out?
Yeah, so I mean, golf projects, I think for me, I'm just taking it month by month. There's a lot of like franchise pieces, like the golf drops is something that has been a hit and something that I thought would only last a couple of weeks and has not slowed down since I started it. So there's a lot of like these franchise pieces that are really interesting. More and more brands keep entering the conversation, which makes it for more content. And again, I think like the uniqueness of what I'm trying to do in the space to serve and be a moment of discovery, like I'm getting a lot of love and passion out of that. So I don't see myself slowing down. I think that's where then I open up the conversation of what the podcast would look like, just to be able to unpack some of the storylines from a brand standpoint, and then also just Instagram. I get 90 seconds to make these different details and have talking points. So I figured the idea of dropping an episode a week around either a specific launch or a storyline that's happening in the space, just to unpack it in larger detail, would be really cool. And then also like give a moment for these brands to like come and storytell too. I think like traditional media, they make it really hard to get their stories out there and have conversations around their product because there is that need for payment. So if I can be somebody that can advocate for them on the brand side, but still articulate things through the consumer lens, it's just something that I'm like really interested in right now.
Awesome stuff. Raymond, thank you so much for joining me, man. Follow him at Golf Projects, Raymond Williams. So much experience to go around and so little time on TikTok. He literally made a podcast with Spotify. Raymond, thank you so much, man. Hope everything goes great. Hopefully we can connect again in 2024.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, Steve.
Thanks for listening to Get in the Hole, the official golf podcast of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Catch us every week wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and be sure to like and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Get in the Hole Pod, and follow Underground Sports Philadelphia at Underground PHI. We'll see you next time. And remember, get in the hole!